Hottie, I have a question for you. Do you think that you have a ceiling on how much you think you could earn? I asked my clients this question this week, and I asked them, if we think about how much you want to make in the next 12 months, what feels like a good, juicy goal that you are working towards? Why I wanted to start with this is I wanted to get really clear on where they were at. And what I did is I took them through a process that I'm going to share with you today, inspired by something that I saw on Instagram. And it was a quote by @HAMZAK. It said, "My coach had us do an exercise where we wrote down our income goal, and then we doubled it, we tripled it, and we quadrupled it. And you wouldn't believe how many people, including me, froze." And why I loved this is because quite often we think that we don't have a ceiling on our ability and how big we can go. And we may talk about having a big business and wanting all of the things in the world. But when it comes down to actually seeing this become a possibility and then looking at how when we make this number so much bigger, how then our office suite and everything as well has to fit into that. And then from here, ensuring that we don't get stuck in the trap of, well, I want to grow and I want to grow to these big levels. Because let me tell you, it's like when you grow to these big levels, it is not about time blocking a little bit better and doing more and being a bit more organized. It is around a completely different way of thinking. The process that I took my clients through being inspired by this is I got them to think about that initial goal, and I got them to write it down. And then under that, I said, write 2, 3, and 4. And then what I said is on number 2, I said, times your income goal by 2. And then on 3, and now times that initial number by 3. And then the last one times it by 4. And what I said to them is, we are going to go through and answer these questions. And I want you to think about earning that number in the next 12 months. And what I love about this, I cannot take credit for this. This is my unofficial mentor, Brooke Castillo. She always talks about something called an impossible goal, where, if we create an impossible goal, it's not about achieving the goal, it's about who we become in pursuit of that goal and how we grow. And, as I've gone through this myself, so much around working out, the beliefs that you have, the blocks that you have, and looking at a completely different way to do things. Because one of the problems is if we move incrementally, right? So if we're doing 100K and the goal this year is 110 or 120, the problem is what we'll do is let's look at selling a little bit more or being a bit more organized or doing a bit more content. The problem is that's going to work for a while, but it's not going to work when we get to 120 and then we go to 140. Because you think about it, it's like if we are looking at growth, we can't just keep working more, because all of a sudden our beautiful little 38-hour week or however long we're working is going to blow out to 80, 100 hours. And I'm pretty sure that you are not starting a business wanting to become an entrepreneur for you to then have a full-time job and no weekends and no evenings. You want balance. If you have a family, it's not like you can really do that anyway. So what I loved about this is, when we think about really maximizing our potential and thinking so much bigger than we even imagine, how differently you will move. And I asked my clients some questions, and you've got 4. And what I would love for you to do is ponder on these. And I want to say too, before I get into it, if you love work like this, if you love training like this, join Business Bang. You may be like, oh, I get it on the podcast, which you absolutely do. However, you do not get me, you do not get the peers, and you do not get the conversation. And for me to hold you at that higher standard and to work through this process together. So the question that I asked was, we're thinking about our income goal, we're timesing it by 4. What would the expanded version of your business and you look like at that level? This was really interesting. So, for a while, my goal was to make 620,000. And how much is that? It's 620, 140. I think it worked out at 3 point something million. We'll just say 3.5 because it's late at night. It's 9:05 on a Saturday. We ain't doing maths this late. But it was really interesting to think about $3 million a year Peter and who she would be and what she would do. And let me tell you, I'm on my little staycation. I'm on my work trip at the moment. I've never done this before. I have traveled before to go and do something, but I've never spontaneously just booked a trip in the way of planning. And this was so much down to the work that I had done with my clients and how I'm like, well, I can't hold my clients at this certain standard and level if I am not there. So that's why I was like, we got to go away. So it was interesting when I was thinking about like expanded Peter and like what she would do and how I thought the expanded version of me would be showing up in a different way. She would see the ROI from investing and how, taking myself away and spending like what, $600 on a weekend could end up paying me $600,000 in return if I get my head space, like if I get my head in the right space and I can come up with the most groundbreaking idea. And when I thought about that, I also thought about how I would spend money, the decisions that I would make. It's really interesting that, because I have had periods in my life where I have not had a lot of money, when I have been like super, super, super stressed. Like I think back to in the pandemic and how I had a pair of shoes and I was so stressed about like buying shoes because you couldn't try shit on down here. You had to buy it online and then send it back. I was wearing a pair of shoes that had a hole in the bottom of it. Like my literal foot was making contact with the footpath because I was so terrified about spending money. And it's interesting here of just still having that hangover and how you can grow and be expanded, but still all of the little beliefs and things that you do and habits that still kind of like, it's almost like a little zit. It's just like attaching itself onto you and it appears out of nowhere. So it was really interesting to kind of like go to this next level and then be like, well, who would be at that level? What would she be doing? How would her business look? And then from that, really seeing around, okay, cool. Well, then how can I make decisions with that same energy? How can I show up with that same energy? And something that the expanded version of me would do is have really strong boundaries. She would have strong boundaries and she would have higher standards. But I also feel at that point, she would be so much more free in other aspects. I don't know if this is a Virgo thing or if this is like a striving and control. And it's like, I will enjoy life when I get to that next level. But I can sometimes be so like focused on where I am going, I kind of forget about life. And it's really interesting that there has been someone I wanted to shag. This is really getting off topic from business. I promise we'll come back. And when I thought about expanded Peter, I thought she would make different decisions knowing that everything is going to be absolutely okay. Like she is the husband. She does not need a husband. She is the husband. And I think because of that, she probably would see men come into her life and she would be like, we could have fun together. Like, come in, pass through my world. Let's have a nice little experience without kind of what I used to do, which was really like wanting people to stay and feeling like that I had to do things a certain way and like perform in a certain way in order to like keep these guys. So it's so interesting, again, taking people through this task and just seeing how, when we think incrementally, we don't usually address this until we think about like significant growth and then how we have to upgrade in the process. Now, the next question I asked was, what would you need to be selling? What offers would exist at that revenue? Now, for me, this was fine. And the reason that this was fine is if you've been here a while, you know that I have really been in pursuit of a completely scalable offer suite. I do not believe in just having one offer. There are a lot of my competitors out there. They do their thing. That is their strategy, but I don't like to just have one offer. I don't want to just have Give Good Email. I don't want this to be like a recurring membership model. I do not like that. What I want to do is I want to have multiple different levels. And when I look at what I sell, having Business Bang, having Give Good Email, doing consulting, it feels really, really good. So you can ask yourself the same. When we think about, 4Xing your initial goal, how would the products, offers, and services shift? And it may be that you are still doing the thing. So for my beautiful e-commerce baddies, it could be that you are still running your super successful e-commerce business, but maybe now you are teaching people on the side. Or maybe now you have a partnership with a really big company or some kind of like you're doing a speaking circuit or you have a book. Like there's so much more scope of how this can look. And what I want you to start to think about is I want you to think about you as a brand and commercialize you, and even if you don't want that, sometimes it's nice to just entertain it and go down that little path and just like mentally try it on and kind of see, because it's really interesting then The thoughts that you may tell yourself like, oh, well, I can't do that. No one would watch me. No one would care about this. No one would read my book. No one would want that. That would be short-lived. And guess what, baby girl? We get to focus on these beliefs right now and we get to rewrite them. And that is not something that we are going to take moving forward. Then the next question is, when you are, oh, and this is fun. Are you ready? Are you ready for this? When you are operating at that level, who becomes your peer? Who are you sitting at tables with? So we're going to do a little exercise, all right? I want you to imagine that you walk into a room and you hear people, okay? You're walking ahead, you hear people talking, and off in the distance, you see a big table. It's probably about like 15 to 20 people. And the vibe is incredible. Everyone's happy. You can tell that it feels like a celebration, but it is not a celebration. This is just a standard fucking Tuesday. And as you approach the table, every single chair is filled, but there is one that is free. And as you walk up to the table, everyone is so excited to see you. They are waving. They're saying, hey, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're here. And you pull that chair out and you sit down in it and you look around the table. And all of the people at the table are your peers, they are your friends, and they are your circle. Who is there? Who can you hold a conversation with? Who can you collaborate in business at a particular level? Go big, go high. Who is there? And I don't want you to judge what comes up, because it is so interesting that like when you have conversations like this, that people think, oh, well, I still want to be friends with my friends. You 100% can. But it is really interesting what I will hear people, and they will get really annoyed when they see these big entrepreneurs with these like top rated podcasts. And they're like, I've been saying this for ages. And I'm like, okay, cool. How cool is it that you can hold your own with Stephen Bartlett? That, you know, if you feel like you've been saying this and he's been saying this, how could it be to actually sit down and have a conversation with him? And this for me was a really big reframe. Whenever, you know, I felt like that people were sharing little podcast snippets or quotes from other people. And I'm like, holy shit, hold on. I've been saying this for the longest time. And instead of feeling pissed off, do you know what I did? I told myself, how cool is it that I've been saying this for so long and there are other people that people would assume are like the peak of the peak. They are like the it people of the industry, and how they are saying the same thing. And I reframe this as, okay, cool. How cool is it then if you sit down at a table with them, they could probably learn something from you. You could have a really good conversation. So I want you to think about who becomes your peer. And I have a little task for you. You know, we think about business expanders, which is fantastic. I want you to start taking these business expanders and I want you to put them in your list of potential clients, because this is exactly what I did with Sophia Amoruso. I remember when she launched Business Class, and I remember looking at her website and I thought, holy shit, I'm going to do a workshop for her. And, you know, that thought didn't come immediately. I remember feeling really, really inspired and then jealous because it looked so fucking good. And then I thought, no, the work that I do is on that level. I will one day teach a workshop for you. And I don't want anyone to think that this is manifestation, because it's not. I fucking pitched. I sent an email. You know, manifesting, one of the things that we miss out on is aligned action. If you want something, you have to have the belief, but you have to go and get it. And if you get a no, you repeatedly go and get it until you bring it into your existence. So what would be really awesome for you to think about is, when you think about all of the people that would be at that table, what would it look like for them to be your client? What would it look like to do a joint venture or have them on your podcast or be on their podcast, and for them to introduce you and say, this is my really good friend. We go to dinner every Tuesday. We love to play golf together. We're on a group chat. Like, I want you to think about that and how good this feels. And let's stay there for a minute, right? And, you know, you probably felt like that when we were talking about 4Xing your income goal, how that felt really out there. But I want you to think now about how that feels so much more achievable, okay? And isn't this fun? Isn't this such a fun way of thinking? Like, I get so excited. It's interesting that like when I was playing around with this $3.5 million, all of a sudden I was like, gosh, that even feels so achievable. Like, that feels like something that could happen this year. We would have to obviously do a huge push, but it was really interesting when I could get myself in this state, how this felt like a possibility. And then the cool thing is that will then affect how I show up in the rest of my business. And then we've got one final question. What impact would you be having? How many people and in what way? So let's go big. We go to our big goal. I want you to think of the impact that you would be having with that. Think of the lives that would be changed. If you've got programs, it's like how many people are successful because of you. If you are moving units and maybe you've got something where it's like we donate 3% of profits or we do this, what that would look like for the causes that you associate with. And how cool is it when we think not only about us achieving our goals, but the byproduct of how this helps everyone else around us? How good is that to think about? Like, for me, it almost feels selfish at times when I feel like my audience is small, because I know that when we're small, I am not helping I'm not helping the amount of people that I could be. So as soon as I think bigger, I get more excited because I think about how this is just going to like increase everything like tenfold or 100-fold or 1,000-fold. And that feels so, so good. And I want you to just stay in that energy. And I want you to feel excited about this because at the end of the day, what you don't need is to be minimized. You don't need someone that is going to tell you this year to think realistic. You need to have this thinking that is so much bigger, and you need to remember that. Because as an entrepreneur, not every day is going to be great. Not every day is going to be successful. You will not always win. You will not get every pitch. That is unfortunate. It is a fact of life. And for that reason, it is up to you for you to vibe high and to keep your energy high and to do everything that you can to return to that beautiful baseline that you have created. So I want you to come back to this episode, all right? And I want you to remember exactly who you are sitting down at a table with. Write it in your phone. And whenever you are having a moment and you are wobbling, because it will happen, I want you to read that. And I want you to be like, I know I'm having a wobbly moment, but how cool is it that I know that I could sit down and have a conversation with all of these people and how they would be like, thank you so much. I've learned something. You've made my day better. I love having you in my life. Because that can be your future, hot stuff. And it is going to be your future. I love this. I love you. I am feeling fired up. I love the podcast. It's so interesting. People like, don't you get tired? And I'm like, sometimes my voice like hurts like a little bit. You know what I mean? Because it's like a little bit chatty chat. And sometimes we have a few false starts. But for the most part, I feel fired up. Quite often I don't plan this. I just sit down and I'm like, what do I want to talk about? Let's riff. Let's do this. What's going to come through me? And today I'm feeling pretty good. It is now 9:20. I think we're going to go for round 2. We are going to get another podcast out for you. I also like our sexy little setup, hotel, podcast, fondle on tour. And yeah, I love this. I love you. I love you more than the sensational dinner that I just had. I went out with my mom. We went out to one of my favorite French restaurants. Oh my gosh, it was so good. And I had this delicious salmon fillet with this I don't want to call it like a pumpkin puree. Imagine like a thick pumpkin soup, but really just beautiful and silken with these cranberries and almonds. And I think it was parsley maybe and some truffle oil. And then for dessert, I had a chocolate fondant with vanilla bean ice cream. And it was just so good with Coke Zero and a salad and some little fries. I am feeling very full, but I actually forgot to have lunch today. So that doesn't matter. And it was so good. I love food. I love French cuisine. If you are ever like, where should I take Peter? French food, always, baby girl. It is my favorite. So I love you more than that. I love you more than like nourishing and deeply transformative, as wanky as it sounds, this weekend has been. Even if I did not be as peak productive as I wanted to be, I had in my head a vision of all of the things that I was going to do. So much of business and entrepreneurship is the intangible. It is not about having the finished business plan, but it is about getting your mind into a state where you know that everything is possible for you. And it was so good to anchor into future Peter and everything that she is going to do. So I 10 out of 10 recommend a sexy little staycation. Who knows, maybe in future we can do some like hot little retreat. I don't know. It's so funny. I actually did used to have an offer on my website. It's still probably there somewhere if you click around, called the Rockstar Experience. And I was going to put you up in this hotel in the Ovalo. We were going to go out to like one of my favorite restaurants in the area. I was going to be like, pick a cuisine, and then I was going to pick like a restaurant to match, and we were going to do a beautiful VIP day. And I never sold it. And I never sold it because I think when I released it, it was interesting that a few people were like, who do you think you are doing this? Like, are you a celebrity? And I felt so proud of it at the time. And in a way, I regret so much, like, not actually like releasing this more. Then unfortunately we had lockdowns for like who knows how long, and I kind of forgot about it. But I'm kind of thinking that we bring it back, or at least if we don't bring that whole big experience, something mini. So if you want the mini VIP option, I'm going to try to find that, because that did exist. I think I emailed it out, and some of you may be like, I remember getting these emails. So if you want the details on that, find me on Instagram. Please give me some context, because I love you all, but you are so funny the amount of times that I will say something and then you will hit me with a word and it will be parsley with a laughing emoji. And I'm going to be like, I don't understand what's happening. And then you'll be like, remember that podcast episode where you say this? And I'm like, guys, when I am recording the podcast, I don't know what happens to me, but I kind of just go unconscious. And it's like you are getting my little stream of unconscious thoughts that are just flowing out of my brain, out of my mouth, and into my microphone. That is how I like to roll here. I'm going to end it here. Hot stuff. I will see you later. I'll see you on the next episode. Stay sexy, go get your cash, and I'll talk to you later. Mwah.